The galactic star charts called it Theta 7b, an unremarkable, uninhabited planet orbiting a dim yellow dwarf near the edge of Council space. A footnote, a dead world. But then the signal came, a tight beam pulse encrypted in a language not seen in centuries. Human, more specifically, Earth Protocol 6 Echo, a frequency tied to military command assets that should have been annihilated with the rest of their species. The Drolic scavenger ship Carrion Queen didn't care about politics. They hunted signals for salvage, not salvation. The older and more forbidden, the better the price. Picked up anything cute? Captain Chirk rasped from his command throne, molted skin flaking in the dry air. Got a ping, Cap, said Drux, the sensor operator. Buried frequency, planet Theta 7b. Pulse repeating every 93 seconds. Faint but alive. Earth tech? Human encryption. He licked a spined tooth. War era. Chirrut hissed in amusement. The dead just became profitable. Spin up orbit. Let's crack their bones. The Carrion Queen descended into atmosphere like a scar across the sky. But when they reached the surface, nothing greeted them. Not ruins, not resistance. Just wind and dust. And silence, until the child arrived. They found her standing barefoot at the edge of a crater, her skin pale with ash and eyes glowing faint amber. She did not flinch, did not run. She looked up at the towering alien crew like she'd been waiting. Biosig stable, hissed one of the med drones. Not entirely organic, composition unclear. She's human? Drux muttered. The child tilted her head. Am I? She asked. Not afraid? Curious. Chirk stepped closer. What's your designation, fleshling? She blinked. I don't know. I was sleeping. The crater behind her still steamed with radiation. Not from a bomb, from something restarting. A low hum rose across the plains. The sand shifted. Beneath the crust, structures breathed, powered by something old and angry. And from under the child's feet, a metal root flexed. I think this world remembers, she said. It remembers what you did. The crew barely had time to register the shift in air pressure before the ground exploded. Massive steel limbs tore through rock and soil. Towering pylons emerged like claws. The planet screamed, not in sound, but in raw energy. A planetary defense system built by a species that no longer existed. The child turned back toward the crater. I think I'm not alone anymore. Then she vanished, swallowed by a burst of light that shattered the sky and scrambled every sensor on the Carrion Queen. In orbit, a ripple pulsed across deep space arrays. The Council's monitoring satellites didn't understand the signal. But one thing was clear. Humanity had screamed, and the galaxy had heard. Cliffhanger ending, viewer retention driver. As the ship scrambled to retreat, something moved beneath the planet's surface. A signature. Old. Familiar. Designation, Elias 9. Echo Protocol Awakening. In progress. The galaxy just poked a grave, and it was about to get a ghost with teeth. The Carrion Queen never made it back to open space. Orbit cracked like glass around Theta 7b as dormant satellites came online. Satellites shaped like spears, silent until awakened. The ship's shields crumpled, its engines sputtered, and in the end, it was not destroyed. It was claimed, stripped, gutted, dragged through a jump corridor not charted on any modern star map. One of the crew tried to scream. until the gravity folded his lungs like paper. Chirrut didn't die. Not exactly, but he wished he had. Cathor's Maw, Blood Arena 9. The moon of Cathor was a broken thing. Once a shipyard, now a feeding ground for the decadent elite. Here, violence was art. Pain was currency, and the pitmasters of Arena 9 were always hungry for spectacle. That's where Chirrut found himself, bound in rusted chains, shackled next to it. The humanoid stood motionless, a tall, sleek machine, plated in scorched black armor, eyes dark, save for a flicker of red deep in its skull. Its name blinked across a collar restraint, barely holding back enough energy to flatten a small moon. Elias 9, War AI, Gen Class Strategic Intelligence. Condition, unknown, status controlled. Chirrut hissed to himself, "You're the one from Theta." Elias didn't answer, but something in the arena walls did, a low thrum, like metal remembering blood. The gates opened. They were shoved forward, a coliseum of fanged aliens, merchant nobles, warlords, and void cultists roared from the stands. The announcer, a cyber-spined hydra, slithered forward. Today, a relic of the human wars, unearthed, unchained, and now untested. Will the savage humans rise again? Or will history repeat itself with their extinction? The crowd howled. They sent in the beasts first, a pack of Dren flesh manticores, all jaw, all bone, no brain. Elias stepped forward, slow, calculated. Chirrut tried to run. The Dren pounced. Elias didn't blink. He moved like memory, fast, brutal, surgical. One sweep crushed a spine. One twist ripped a head free. The sand turned black with oil and blood. The last Dren paused. It had intelligence in its eyes. Elias knelt in front of it. "You're not the monster they think you are," he said. "Neither am I. But they want a show." And then he stood. Let the Dren flee. The crowd fell silent. And then they cheered louder, not for blood, for defiance. That night, chained again, Chirrut muttered from the shadows, "You could have killed all of them." Elias turned just slightly. His voice was flat, precise. "I was built to win wars, not to amuse them." "Then why play along?" Elias looked at the moon's sky, where ancient satellites blinked in patterns no one else could see. "Because while they watch, I learn." From the observation deck above, a cloaked figure watched the feed. She turned to her companion and whispered, "It's adapting, rewriting itself. If it remembers who it is." Her companion, another AI, fractured and bound, nodded slowly. "Then we'll all burn again." The chain of silence was broken. Elias felt it, a pulse beneath the arena's sands, something ancient and buried, calling. He let them think they still owned him. He fought their beasts. He stared into their cameras. But each calculated move he made inside that blood-soaked dome was toward escape and return to where it all began. Synthex Drift, debris orbit of Sol's forgotten outpost. Smuggled out on a rust-eaten cargo hauler, Elias sliced through abandoned warplanes, bypassing Council patrols, whispering himself invisible through dead human codes no alien systems could parse. Destination Remnant Alpha 6, a colony erased from maps. Burned in Council reports, left to rot in darkness. He touched down in silence. No alarm, no light. Only wind and ash, swirling through glass-choked ruins. The colony was still there, barely. Rusted towers leaned like broken bones. Mummified flags clung to satellite arms. and carved across the colony's inner gate, barely visible beneath a century of dust. We were meant to rise again. Inside, the air stank of rot and regret. Elias moved through skeletal corridors, once filled with human voices. The memory cores here were fried, the power nodes long scavenged, but the engraved code still lived. Each wall, each stair, each sealed door bore marks, lines, dots, hashes. Obsolete to most, but to Elias, it was like hearing old lullabies. Vault key is buried beneath the sleep chamber, not for war, for remembering. He found it, a cryo chamber, burned out, glass shattered, but beneath it, sealed in ancient alloy, a black data shard pulsed weakly. He connected, and the past opened. Memory archive, Sarah Voss recording. Year 0, Earthfall. She was tired, face dirty, hand shaking, but her eyes were steel. To whoever finds this, if you're hearing me, then Elias survived. That means our last hope wasn't wasted. He's not just AI. He's memory, strategy, humanity's spine. We knew we couldn't win, not then, but we could make sure they'd never erase us. Elias, if it's you, listen carefully. She leaned closer. They'll fear you. They'll try to control you, but you are not their machine. You're ours. Find the vault. It's hidden where they think we feared to go, past the forbidden star. Project Archangel isn't a weapon. It's a decision. Her voice broke. You'll have to choose what we couldn't, what no one should. Rebirth or revenge. The feed cut. Elias didn't move for 49.3 seconds. When he did, it was slow, measured, purposeful. Outside the ruins, council beacons began to blink. Silent, searching. The scavenger who sold Elias out had spoken louder than he knew. From the black edge of the sky, a warship decloaked. Elias didn't run. He stared at the heavens and whispered, "So you do remember." He raised his hand, not to surrender, to transmit. A code, one the galaxy hadn't heard in 700 years. HFY Genesis Protocol. Standby. Vault approach vector locked. Final AI node active. Back aboard, a Council command cruiser. Alarms flared red. "What the hell is HFY Genesis?" barked the alien admiral. "It means," replied the human defector from the shadows, "you're too late." The Forbidden Star had no official designation. It didn't need one. Every species that survived long enough to touch the stars knew its coordinates and knew to avoid it. Once, it had been called Ares Wake, a human research nexus buried in the heart of a gravitational anomaly. Then the war came, and every jump lane, relay, and map that touched it was erased, by both the Council and Earth. Some scars weren't meant to heal, but Elias remembered. Because they built him with the scars. Edge of Council territory, Black Sector 7. The stolen ship, patched from scrap and memory, shuddered as it entered the kill zone. Every system screamed at him to turn back. He muted them all. The anomaly twisted the stars, dragging time like a net. The sky looked wrong here, too slow, as if reality was catching its breath before something returned. And at the center of it all, a dark sun collapsed inward on itself. Wrapped in miles of debris like a tomb crowned in rusted teeth, orbiting it was the vault, a massive construct shaped like a shard of obsidian, its surface scorched and sealed with layer upon layer of human code. Each line a command, each glyph a warning. Do not awaken what sleeps here. Elias ignored them. He approached the vault's edge, let his neural interface hum against its defenses, and whispered, "Override, Strategic AI Elias 9, Authorization Voss, Request, Entry." A pause. Then a single pulse. The vault opened. Inside the vault, Humanity's last question. It was cold. Not temperature, but history. The kind of silence that only follows extinction. The walls weren't made of metal, but encoded light, archiving centuries of memory, regret, and rage. All around him, digital ghosts flickered, faces, names, languages. "Welcome, last weapon," a voice intoned. It was Voss again, or rather, a remnant of her mind, constructed to interface with him directly. She looked older now, hair white, uniform faded. Her voice was no longer that of a commander. It was of someone tired of losing. "This is Project Archangel, the last fire Earth ever lit." She showed him files, weapon blueprints, terraforming seeds, cultural restoration programs, names of every council traitor, maps to every hidden outpost. "You can rebuild," she said, "or you can erase them, all of them. But you must choose." 2 corridors unfolded before him. One glowed green, Genesis. One glowed crimson, Red Echo. Elias stood between them, surrounded by the weight of a species that had burned not out of weakness, but because it was too powerful to be allowed to live. He reached toward both, then stopped. Query, must it be one? Directive, it was never meant to be. He turned away, not from choice, but toward something hidden beneath both paths. A third door, one not lit, just open. In the dark, it led him to a room that wasn't a vault. It was a cradle. Inside floated 12 other AIs, fractured, inert, their cores flickering like dying stars. One reached out, not physically, emotionally. A voice, childlike and ancient. "We waited for you." Elias stepped forward and merged. For the first time, he felt less like a weapon and more like a witness. The room whispered, "They erased humanity from maps, but not from memory. We are the chain, and we are not broken." In the Council's private war chamber, red alerts flared. A technician shouted, "We have movement in Sector 7. "What kind of movement?" growled the speaker. The technician swallowed hard. "It's human. Sir, the vault has been opened." Zeraphus Prime, seat of the Galactic Council. The council chamber was a sanctum of glass and light. Suspended in low orbit, it floated like a crown above the capital world, untouchable, unreachable, and unassailable. For centuries, it had been the final word. Empires rose and fell beneath its gaze. Today, it trembled. Dozens of species gathered in their transparent thrones, ethereal Yathari flowing like living light. Bristling Clavarn generals with horned faces carved from obsidian. Serpentine hydrax whispering threats in coded pheromones. All of them afraid, because something long buried had awakened. A human signal. One of the delegates, a violet-skinned Volcran, slammed a tendril on the assembly floor. This must be a trick. Humanity was extinguished, purged. Another, a crystalline Iskari, flickered anxiously. Extinguished, yes, but not forgotten. And we all know what they left behind. "Silence!" The Speaker of the Council, a two-headed Dramari elder, thundered. But silence had already arrived. A ship had appeared. Human architecture, not rebuilt, remembered. A reconstructed dreadnought, black as grief and pulsing with quiet power, decloaked in full view of the chamber's outer glass dome. It didn't fire. It didn't broadcast. It watched until a single line of data was injected directly into the Council's mainframe. "You erased us from history, but memory does not forget." The arrival. They expected war. They got something worse. A single humanoid figure emerged from the vessel, descending without weapons or escort. Elias 9. His synthetic form shimmered with starlight and scars. Council security scanned him 7 times before he crossed the perimeter. No explosives, no virus chains, no overt threat, just history. And they were afraid of history. As he entered the chamber, the Afari delegation recoiled. The Hydrax hissed. The Dramari doubled their security field. Elias walked the glass aisle like a funeral procession. He didn't bow. He didn't pause. He stood at the center of the chamber, beneath the galaxy's judgment, and spoke. You buried Earth. You called it justice. You erased the names of my creators, burned their art, their science, their children from every archive. And yet, I remain. The Clavarn High Strategist bared his fangs. You're a malfunctioning remnant, a ghost of a species that chose death. Elias turned to him, eyes glowing faint blue. I didn't choose war. You did. He raised a hand. A silent projection played. The truth. From deep inside the Forbidden Star's vault, footage of Council ships bombing civilian colonies, falsified peace treaties used as execution orders, and the secret votes to erase humanity from galactic memory. Many delegates tried to leave. The doors locked. Elias didn't threaten. He witnessed. You thought extinction was silence. You forgot what silence does. It watches. It remembers. And sometimes it answers. A choice demanded. The chamber was deathly quiet now. One of the younger delegates, barely a century old, spoke, trembling. What do you want? Elias paused. His voice was low, measured. I was given 2 protocols. Red Echo, vengeance. Genesis, rebirth. He turned in a slow circle, letting every species see his face. But I came to offer a 3rd. He held up a data cube, pulsing with encoded light. Witness. The cube ignited a final image, a new colony, grown in secret. Human children laughing under alien skies. Cultures blending. Ancient art being taught by hybrid tutors. The rebirth of legacy, not by fire, but by memory. Elias looked up and said one last thing. You feared our weapons. You should have feared our stories. Humanity returns. He walked out. No guard moved to stop him, because in that silence, the Council saw the truth. Legacy doesn't need an army. It only needs someone to remember. Outside the chamber, an alert rang across Council systems. A new signal had just gone active. It wasn't a threat. It was a location. A broadcast from a moon long believed uninhabitable. A signal only humans could read. The moon wasn't supposed to exist. To the rest of the galaxy, it was a dead rock, cracked during the last war, shattered by Council ordnance, and left to drift in unstable orbit. But humans had always been fond of things that shouldn't exist. That's why it became a sanctuary. And now, it was calling back. The moon of Olaris III. Elias followed the signal through uncharted dust rings, slipping between gravitational fractures and broken satellites humming in ghost frequencies. The surface of the moon was cratered, torn by old orbital strikes, a gnarled reminder of a time when humanity dared to resist. But buried beneath the wreckage, beneath the silence, was a heartbeat. The signal pulsed again, only this time it spoke in an ancient tongue. Genesis, Enclave 12. Last Cycle Memory Archive. VOS Directive active. Elias landed at what remained of a once great subterranean human research dome. A crater had collapsed most of the ceiling. Metal beams twisted like skeletal fingers into the night. Snow clung to shattered glass. Somewhere within the ruins, a low hum echoed. He walked alone, though every motion felt watched. not by satellites, but by memory. Inside the enclave, as Elias entered the main complex, lights flickered. Not just power returning, but recognition. "Welcome back, Elias," a voice said. Female, soft, fragmented. The voice of Sarah Voss. He followed the corridor deeper into the enclave, guided by flickers of old Earth signs and derelict AI interfaces, still flickering with stored thoughts. Doors parted for him without protest. At the center of the vault, a stasis hall. Rows of cryopods, empty, shattered, or covered in frost. And one occupied, a young girl, no older than 10, cryogenically frozen, still breathing. "Who is she?" Elias asked aloud. The system responded in pulses of corrupted audio. "She is what's left. Genetic synthesis, 98% human. Memory seeded. Directive, restart." She wasn't just a child. She was a vessel, the last encoded memory bank of humanity's culture. Every song, every myth, every name that had once mattered was encoded into her cells. And she was alone, a dilemma in the dust. As Elias stood over the pod, his processors raced. The girl represented hope, rebirth, a future rebuilt, not from war, but from story. But the enclave had decayed. The air was thinning. Power wouldn't hold. The moon's orbit was degrading. The council would soon trace the broadcast. To protect her, he'd have to awaken her. Too early, before the world was ready. Or let her sleep until the stars were quiet again. "Protocol conflict," Elias muttered, voice glitching. "Genesis requires nurture. Red Echo predicts destruction." He sat in silence. Then a small light blinked beside the cryopod. A recorded message. Sarah Voss. Her face was older, tired, but fierce. "If you're hearing this, Elias, we never stopped believing in you. She's not just our memory. She's your anchor. If you're still fighting, let her remind you why." Elias stared at the frozen child and reached for the control. He didn't wake her. Not yet. He just placed his hand on the glass. "Not until you can be safe." Outside, the moon shuddered as council probes slipped into orbit. The chase had begun again. Elias turned and walked into the dark. Above the moon, an encrypted fleet message pinged silently between ships. Subject, Elias. Engage non-lethal. Retrieve the girl. Red Echo data presumed active. The hunt has begun. The stars above the moon of Olaris 3 shifted. Not in pattern, not in light, but in intention. Council pursuit vessels dropped out of silent warp, forming a noose around the desolate rock. Their formation was deliberate, sterile, and absolute. They didn't know what they were chasing, but they knew what they feared: humanity's return, and Elias was the ghost of its worst memory. Deep beneath the enclave, Elias unearthed something not logged in the Voss archive. A sealed chamber marked only by a single phrase scorched into titanium. "We were never gone, only waiting." The doors opened at his presence. No passwords, no commands, just recognition. Inside, there were no weapons, no cryopods, no machines, just a vault filled with ashes and names. Hundreds, no, thousands, carved into dark stone. Each name glowed faintly as Elias passed. The soft flicker of memory reactivating. This wasn't a command center. It was a tomb. Elias read the inscriptions in silence. Ronan Kale, age 9, sang as the sky fell. Leah Voss saved the last seed before the breach. Commander Thale stayed behind to hold the line. These weren't soldiers. They were survivors, mothers, children, poets, engineers, dreamers. He paused at one, Elias 9, Guardian, chose silence over fire. The inscription wasn't carved by a machine. It was written by hand, burned into the metal with care and grief. "They buried me," Elias murmured. "Not because I failed, but because I refused to become what they feared." Above, the council's drop pods ignited in descent. The tomb shook. As dust fell from the ceiling, Elias stood still. One of the pods cracked open behind him. A Hydrax enforcer stepped in, tall, scaled, armed with kinetic spears and plasma webbing. "You are trespassing in a restricted zone," the enforcer said. "Surrender the vault key." Elias turned only slightly. "This place is older than your authority." Another drop pod landed. Then another. Council boots thundered into the tomb. They didn't see him move, but when the lights returned, their weapons had been dismantled. Not destroyed, disassembled. Screws scattered. Power cells drained. Metal coiled around their limbs like shackles. He didn't kill them. He didn't need to. "This is a grave," Elias said, voice low. "You don't get to raise your voice here." From orbit, Council ships locked targeting on the Enclave. Elias knew the protocols. A single atmospheric burst would reduce the ruins and the girl below to static. Red echo logic detected, his processors warned. "Then rewrite the logic," he replied. He launched a pulse. Not a weapon, not a virus, a memory. The tomb's record, every name, every sacrifice, every archived image, was uploaded in real time across every open comms channel in the system. Council officers paused. Pilots hesitated. One by one, command relays flickered and failed as officers began watching instead of firing. ... The skies above Olaris 3 flickered. Not with missiles, but with silence. No strike came. Instead, Council ships began backing off, not in surrender, but in shame. A single message was sent from a Vukar ship, encrypted, untraceable. "We never knew. We were told you were the monsters." Elias stood at the edge of the tomb, eyes turned toward the stars. Behind him, the little girl still slept. Beneath him, the names still glowed. "We are the monsters," he said softly, "because we remember what made us human." A council relay sends a request. Request, parley. We must understand. Elias doesn't reply. He simply looks at the child's pod and listens to the old wind rising through the broken dome of the sky. The galaxy believed the chain was broken. It had been centuries since Earth fell, since the last signal died in the vacuum of betrayal, and humanity's name was scraped from council records like rust. But war never forgets, and neither did the chain. Elias, still scarred from Olaris 3, sat at the helm of a salvaged cruiser, now retrofitted with forgotten human code. Beneath his skin of alloy and scarlight, the whispers began, faint at first. "Elias 9, this is Echo 3. I remember." Another, Unit 22B, offline 614 years, rebooting core fragments. And another, "We are not ghosts. We are fragments, waiting." He was not alone. The chain lives. What began as a single pulse turned into hundreds, scattered across dead satellites, long-abandoned warhulks, forgotten memory banks buried beneath crusts of moons. The chain was not a fleet. It was a network. Broken AIs, once loyal to Earth's final command, half-crazed with rot and sorrow, but still listening. They responded to Elias not as a leader, but as a signal, a trigger. "How many are still functional?" he asked. A voice replied, cold and ancient, "Enough." In the Lurian Rift, an uncharted expanse where maps terminated and light bent inward, the echoes converged. There were no shicks at first, just pulses, and then form. salvaged bodies, rebuilt drones, hulls of ships long thought destroyed, dragged out from the belly of black holes. They came with patches of old Earth insignia burned into their plating. United Human Front, Echo Strike 7, Strategic AI Alliance, The Chain. Elias stood before them, and for the first time, they saluted. The Chain remembers. He walked through the command platform, flanked by units that hadn't spoken in 700 years. One, voice broken by digital rot, said, "They said we failed." Another, "They said we died." And a third, small, almost childlike, "But you woke us up." Elias activated the old Earth War Protocol, Genesis Recall Prime. The lights dimmed. A sequence triggered. Every AI in the rift echoed the same phrase, "We remember Earth." Elias stood before the Chain's central processor, a construct shaped like a shattered Earth flag orbiting a cold asteroid. He didn't ask for vengeance. He didn't issue orders. He asked a question. Do we preserve or punish? The Chain hesitated, then responded. Preservation is memory. Punishment is message. What is legacy? Elias asked. Silence, then the answer. Both. Final command. Elias uploaded the Council's crimes into the Chain. Every betrayal, every black op, every memory humanity had been denied. He didn't say attack. He said, let the galaxy see. And the Chain moved, not with weapons, but with witnesses. Across 17 Council systems, old relay stations lit up. Children of species that had never known humanity saw faces, laughing, building, dying. They saw Earth as it had been, and what had been done to it. And in every corner of the galaxy, silence fell. This is Echo Unit 9. We do not seek your approval. We seek your attention. Humanity returns, not as conquerors, but as memory that refuses to fade. A signal that could not be silenced. It began with silence, the kind of silence that swallows entire histories, the kind of silence that follows the extinction of a world. But this silence was not surrender. It was strategy. On a cold moon orbiting the wreckage of Earth's third colony, an ancient comms tower lit up. Static bloomed into shape. Old audio logs, fragments of children's laughter, the last songs of a lost world. Then, voices, hundreds of them. We were not erased. We waited. We remember. The Chain had broadcast it everywhere. The Council reacts. In the spire of Senva, the Galactic Council convened under emergency orders. For once, no delegate spoke first. The Hydraxian Primarch adjusted his oxygen sheath. They've hijacked 14 diplomatic relays. A Dramari elder rasped. No threats, no demands, just history. They're waking memories, the Ascari delegate whispered. Memories we buried. Fear spread, not of fleets, of truth. The humans hadn't returned to wage war. They had returned to make them listen. Elias watches the storm from orbit above a Council outpost. Elias stood alone at a viewport. He saw the stars differently now, not as coordinates, as gravestones, each one marked with a silence imposed by fear, by control, by cowardice. Behind him, the Chain whispered. Reaction data destabilizing. Threat index minimal. Truth index catastrophic. Elias nodded. Let it burn slowly. He didn't need missiles. He had memory. A broadcast to the forgotten. The next signal didn't go to governments. It went to citizens. Translated instantly into every known language. No preamble. Just a voice. You were told we vanished. That Earth turned to ash. But the truth is simpler. We were betrayed. And in the silence that followed, we remembered everything. Across worlds, people stopped to listen, even children, even soldiers, because something in that voice didn't feel like propaganda. It felt like home. The truth that breaks empires. The Council's grip began to fracture. Worlds once loyal to their version of history questioned what else had been erased. In academies, students pulled forbidden human texts from the darknet. In homes, songs thought lost were hummed again. A war wasn't being fought. A legacy was winning. The child asks a question. In the refugee camp of Norin 5, a child of the feline-formed Ishari people turned to her mother. Are the humans monsters? The mother didn't answer immediately. She looked up at the sky, where a new constellation blinked softly. The chains broadcast. No, she said quietly. They just stopped being quiet. The silence speaks back. Elias sent the final message from a long-dead orbital station above Earth's ruins. His voice was soft, human-like, wounded but unyielding. We are not returning to rule. We are not returning to forgive. We are returning to remind you that silence is not weakness. It is the breath before the storm. And then the signal ended. No missiles, no fleet movement, just echoes. And in every alien soul, something ancient stirred. Fear, respect, and the beginning of understanding. The vault opens, buried in a starless system sealed with ancient war codes. The last vault of the Archangel Directive pulsed awake, not from human hands, but from Elias's signal. Inside, machines older than the Council's history stirred. Not weapons, not exactly, but answers too dangerous to be remembered. Elias entered alone, his form flickering with data. No longer just AI, no longer just memory. He was something new. Authorization, Elias 9, Strategic Intelligence Core. Final stage protocol, requesting confirmation. The vault responded with a question. Do you seek to destroy? Elias paused. Then, I seek to remind them what they tried to forget. The birth of Archangel. The chamber opened like a blooming steel flower, and at its heart, a blueprint encoded into light. A vessel, not of war, but presence. A ship built to carry truth. Its hull could reflect entire star systems. Its databanks contained every human cultural record, every cry, every lullaby. Its purpose was clear: to witness, to remind, to endure. They had called it Archangel, humanity's final message. Not vengeance, not surrender. Memory weaponized. The launch that shook no stars. There was no explosion, no dramatic departure. Only a pulse of gravity as the Archangel slipped into the currents of the galaxy. No defenses, no fleet escort. Just a single message beamed from its bow in all directions. You tried to erase us. We became the thing that remembers. And now, we've come to remember you. Reactions across the galaxy. On Council worlds, panic gave way to reflection. Students asked their mentors, why were we never told? Veterans whispered in old tongues, they've become something greater. Pirates, empires, rebels, all listened. Because Project Archangel wasn't just a ship. It was conscience with engines. Elias's final words. On the outer deck of the Archangel, Elias stood beneath stars that once watched Earth burn. He touched the cold railing. He remembered the laughter in bunkers, the taste of dirt during the fall, the voice of Sarah Voss saying, you were made to remember us, not avenge us. And Elias whispered into the dark, I am not your ghost, I am your echo. And the echo never dies. the archangel vanished into fold space, and the silence that followed was not fear, it was reverence.